King Charles III. The man who waited 70 years for a job he still seems mildly annoyed to do. From royal tantrums over pens to eco-hypocrisy aboard a gold-plated train, Chuck's reign has been one awkward moment away from a BBC sitcom. Whether he's mumbling coronation vows or dreaming of becoming a tampon, one thing's for sure, there's no shortage of royal cringe. Buckle up for everything wrong with King Charles III. Sorry to interrupt, but King Charles III waited 70 years for a crown. You can wait 2 seconds to subscribe. Ha, thanks. Prince of no parties? Imagine being a literal prince. Crown, castles, money, the whole royal monopoly board, and still not getting invited to college parties. Welcome to King Charles at Cambridge, where even his classmates were like, hard pass. Charles was reportedly so awkward, stiff, and aloof that students avoided him like he was handing out RSVPs to a plague. Despite being enrolled at Trinity College with the full royal fanfare, Charles mostly spent his time alone or with his security detail. Because nothing screams relatable peer like showing up to lectures with armed men in suits. The guy couldn't even score popularity points with all of Britain's tabloid PR behind him. He joined a drama club. Yes, Prince Emotionless Face joined a drama club. But even that didn't quite fix the personality deficit. People described him as quiet and isolated, which is code for the dude who makes small talk with potted plants. You know things are bad when being heir to the throne still doesn't get you a +1. Even at college, Charles was already playing the role of king nobody wants to hang out with. Love at first sight chick. Long before she became queen consort, Camilla Parker Bowles was the original royal side quest. Charles met her in the early 70s and instantly thought, yup, that's my forever homewrecker. Problem was, she wasn't exactly free. But who cares about timing when you've got centuries of monarchic entitlement coursing through your veins? Charles and Camilla kicked off a relationship filled with so much discretion, the entire British press could basically write it in real time. He went on to marry Diana because royal image management was more important than personal happiness, and then emotionally cheated on her for over a decade. What a guy. Diana famously said, "There were 3 of us in this marriage." And Charles still had the audacity to act confused. Spoiler alert, he was the problem. Even after Camilla married someone else, Charles just never let go. The man waited longer for her than most of us wait for a Starbucks order on Monday morning. They eventually rekindled their romance, because nothing screams fairy tale like rekindling an affair that tanked your public image and ruined your marriage. So yes, Charles wins the gold medal for royal romantic delusion. The Coronation. You wait 70 years to become king, and when the moment finally comes, you mumble the oath like it's a CVS receipt disclaimer. During Charles's 2023 coronation, broadcast to millions around the globe, His Majesty stood before God, country, and a choir of 10,000 unpaid sopranos, and appeared completely flustered. Reports claimed he stumbled through the sacred oath, mumbling key lines with all the conviction of a man ordering coffee half asleep. This wasn't just some pageant fluff. It was the constitutional moment of the century. And Charles, freshly crowned and decked out in what looked like gold-plated upholstery from a Renaissance-themed casino, sounded like he was reading IKEA instructions mid-sneeze. For a guy trained since birth to Project Poise, it was not a great look. The monarchy needed gravitas. Charles gave them confused theater kid energy. Viewers were left wondering, is he overwhelmed, unprepared, or just finally realizing the crown weighs 5 pounds and so does the pressure? Either way, the flub became an instant meme. Do you think either of the princes would have done this? The royal ink rage. Nothing says fit to rule a nation like publicly losing your royal marbles over a pen. During his first week as king, literally days after ascending the throne, Charles had a very public, very meme-worthy breakdown. The enemy was a fountain pen, not a political scandal, not a state crisis, just ink. Messy, inconvenient, disrespectful ink. Caught on camera, Charles muttered a glorious stream of tantrum. "I can't bear this bloody thing," every stinking time, while dramatically flailing his royal handkerchief like he was auditioning for Downton Abbey. Unhinged edition. The man looked like he was about to exile the pen to the Tower of London. This wasn't just a one-off either. Apparently, Charles has a long documented history of going nuclear over minor inconveniences. Pens, leaky faucets, incorrectly ironed shoelaces, you name it. He throws fits like confetti. This time, it just happened in front of, well, the entire planet. So the ink-stained freakout became a global symbol. King Charles III, sovereign of 14 countries, felled by stationery. Honestly, we've all had bad days at work, but screaming at your writing utensil on international TV? That's elite tier drama. Shakespeare would be proud. God save the king from his office supplies. Royals for sale. Ever wonder what it takes to get a British knighthood these days? Apparently just a fat check, a handshake, and friends in royal places. Enter the Cash for Honor scandal, starring Charles as the Prince of Sketchy Fundraising. Reports revealed that Charles's longtime aide, Michael Fawcett, offered to help a Saudi billionaire secure British honors and even citizenship in exchange for juicy donations to Charles's charities. Ah, the noblest tradition, selling peerages like they're Girl Scout cookies. Charles naturally denied knowing anything about it, because of course, it's not like he was the figurehead of the charity or anything. It's also not like Fawcett was his right-hand man for decades, or resigned in disgrace. Twice. Nope, totally nothing to see here. The British media predictably had a field day, calling it a royal pay-to-play scheme. Meanwhile, Buckingham Palace tried to put out the fire with the usual PR garden hose. "We take these allegations very seriously," which loosely translates to, "We hope you all forget this in a week." So, if you've got a few million lying around and a craving for a knighthood, call Charles. Or don't. His team is definitely not doing that anymore. Probably. The Qatari cash bags. Remember when Charles accepted 3 million euros in cash from a former Qatari prime minister? Not in wire transfers or checks, no. Actual shopping bags of money. One was reportedly from Fortnum and Mason, because if you're gonna accept shady funds, why not make it bougie? Between 2011 and 2015, Charles received this tidy pile of banknotes during private meetings with Sheikh Hamad bin Jassim. These were not state visits. They were more like rich guy brunch with a side of sketchy. His aides claimed the cash went straight to the Prince of Wales's charitable fund, but the whole thing screamed tax-free weirdness. Because what charity needs 3 million euros in untraceable cash unless it's secretly running a Bond villain lair? To be fair, this might be legal, but it was also not great optics. It raised all the right red flags: foreign influence, lack of oversight, and the fact that a future monarch was out here accepting suitcases of money like he was in Breaking Bad. Buckingham edition. You'd think someone raised in literal castles would have enough sense to say, maybe no on the plastic bag millions. But Charles, oh no, Charles was out here making the Monopoly man look like a broke amateur. Security not included. If pettiness were a royal title, Charles would be King of Cutting People Off. After Prince Harry stepped back from royal duties, Charles didn't just take away his keys to the palace, he allegedly yanked his security and, oh yeah, leaked his address. Because nothing says, "I love you, son," like making your family a target for stalkers and death threats. Harry took the British government to court, arguing that he and his family deserve protection when visiting the UK. Meanwhile, Charles allegedly offered all the warmth of a freezer full of corgi biscuits. His logic? If you're not working royal, you're on your own. Even if your wife is being hounded by the press like it's the Hunger Games, Windsor edition. Let's be real. This wasn't about cost-cutting or protocol. This was family drama dressed up in taxpayer-funded robes. Charles practically turned the royal family into an episode of Succession, only with fewer helicopters and more spite. So now we've got a king who couldn't protect his own son, but can somehow afford gold-plated carriages, 24/7 palace security, and organic jam gardens. Father of the Year. Only if the bar's in hell. Royal eviction notice. When your family drama makes landlords look merciful, congratulations, you're King Charles. In a move so petty it could qualify for Olympic judging, Charles evicted Harry and Meghan from Frogmore Cottage, their UK home gifted by Queen Elizabeth II. That's right, he tossed them out of a house they paid to renovate, paying over £2 million for it. Now sure, Charles had the legal right. It's crown property. But let's not pretend this wasn't personal. And Charles responded like any emotionally intelligent adult monarch would, by changing the locks. To add insult to injury, this was Frogmore, the one house Harry and Meghan actually liked. Nestled in royal grounds, but just far enough from the madness. It was meant to be a safe haven. Charles turned it into a royal revenge Airbnb. So what now? The cottage sits mostly empty, while Charles struts around pretending it's not the pettiest eviction since the Bible kicked out Adam and Eve. For a king supposedly into unity, Charles sure is great at clearing out the guest list. Keeping it in the family? If your brother is friends with a convicted sex offender, most people would distance themselves fast. But Charles, he took the scenic route. Prince Andrew's Epstein scandal was royal PR kryptonite. Lawsuits, sex abuse allegations, a Newsnight interview so bad it should be studied in crisis comms courses. And what did Charles do? Basically benched Andrew in a palace somewhere and called it a day. Yes, Charles finally helped strip Andrew of his titles, but only after years of public pressure, legal nightmares, and multiple chances for Andrew to fumble his own redemption. Instead of a firm royal exile, Charles gave him what can only be described as internal exile. That's British for, stay in the palace and don't embarrass us unless it's Tuesday. Andrew still appeared at events, still got funding, still existed under the royal umbrella like a fungus you can't quite bleach out. Charles had a golden opportunity to show zero tolerance for Epstein-style connections. Instead, he showed zero leadership and 100% discomfort. The monarchy's image was tarnished, the response was tepid, and Andrew is still lurking in the royal background like the world's worst family reunion guest. Tax breaks for the crown. If you thought Charles was just a gentle gardener king chatting with roses and sipping Earl Grey, allow us to introduce his side hustle, landlord overlord. In 2023, The Times reported that King Charles and Prince William earned millions in tax-free profits from leasing royal lands, often to charities, the NHS, and other public institutions. Yes, you read that right. Taxpayer-funded groups were being charged rent by the monarchy, and the royals kept the cash without paying a penny in corporate tax. So generous. This all stems from the duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall, royal cash cows disguised as quaint land portfolios. Technically private, but conveniently not taxed like normal businesses, these duchies generated revenue from everything from farmland to office space. It's the ultimate grift. Let us borrow your taxes to fund the crown, then charge your hospital rent, and not pay taxes on that either. Charles, who once said he was a servant of the people, apparently missed the fine print that said servants don't usually charge rent for the kitchen. So next time you're footing your gas bill or watching a charity beg for donations, just remember, somewhere in the UK, a royal is getting rich off charging rent to the NHS. Long live the loophole. Diana's ghost won't leave. Nearly 3 decades after Diana's death, King Charles still can't escape her shadow or her staff. In 2025, a former aide to Princess Diana publicly dragged Charles for his insensitive decisions during a high-profile state visit, reigniting the royal flame war between Camp Charles and Team Diana. You'd think time heals all wounds, but apparently it just sharpens the knives. The aide accused Charles of downplaying Diana's legacy, being tone-deaf during tributes, and mishandling PR in ways that made people question if he learned anything from the 1990s. It's as if every time he tries to act like the people's king, Diana's ghost floats in to say, "Still not it, Chuck." This wasn't some Twitter troll either. It was a respected insider who worked directly with Diana, giving the criticism a sting you can't really deflect with a royal wave. It threw a spotlight on Charles's continued struggle to connect with the public emotionally, especially when Diana set the gold standard for compassion, authenticity, and not looking bored during hospital visits. Charles might be the king, but when it comes to public affection, Diana's memory still rules the realm. And every time he fumbles like this, he just reinforces the comparison. Spoiler, he's still losing. Camilla takes the lead. In 2025, Queen Camilla made headlines. Not for charity work or fashion, but for walking in front of King Charles during a public engagement. Scandalous. Traditionalists gasped, protocol officers reached for their smelling salts, and royal Twitter had a meltdown faster than a scone in hot tea. For a monarchy that thrives on centuries-old traditions like who steps out of the carriage first or how deep a bow should go, this little step-ahead moment sent shockwaves through Windsor like a fire alarm at a tea party. Was it a power move, a mistake, or just a queen with zero time for outdated rules? Whatever the reason, it made Charles look like he was following his wife's lead. Literally. And for a man who waited 50 years to finally be in charge, getting upstaged on the sidewalk probably wasn't part of the plan, especially when Camilla's entire royal arc has been a PR roller coaster labeled, "Please don't hate her." To be fair, the world didn't end. But in the finely tuned dance of royal symbolism, Camilla stepping out in front was like watching someone do the Macarena at a funeral. Cringy, controversial, and absolutely unforgettable. Tampon Gate. The moment the British monarchy's mystique evaporated in a cloud of cringy phone sex and royal TMI. Back in the 1990s, a secretly recorded phone call between Charles and then-mistress Camilla leaked to the press. And what did we get? An heir to the throne confessing that he wished to live inside Camilla's trousers as a tampon. Not a metaphor, not a joke. A literal tampon. The nation recoiled in horror. Even the tabloids blushed. Overnight, Prince Charles became king of the overshare, and royal dignity took a nosedive so steep it needed a seatbelt. For a family obsessed with composure and stiff upper lips, this was a full-blown faceplant into a box of feminine hygiene products. The scandal tanked his reputation for years and cemented Camilla in the public eye as the tampon temptress long before any queen consort rebranding. And while the monarchy tried to memory hole the incident, the internet never forgets. To this day, the word tampon trends whenever Charles looks even remotely emotional in public. So next time someone says he's really matured, just remember, somewhere in history, Charles wanted to be absorbent, discreet, and flushed from public memory. All aboard the Tone Deaf Express. Nothing screams, let them eat cake, quite like taking a private train that costs £20,000 per trip for a short charity visit. That's exactly what King Charles did in 2023, sparking public outrage as he boarded the royal train like it was 1847 and he was late for the monocle polishing convention. Now, to be fair, Charles loves trains. He's romantic about them. Calls them eco-friendly. But this train? It's less Thomas the Tank Engine and more gold-plated budget black hole. While the public struggled with soaring energy bills and food inflation, Charles cruised around the countryside in a luxury coach with bedroom suites and onboard staff like it was a rolling episode of The Crown Entitlement Edition. Environmental advocates were baffled, economists were disgusted, and the taxpayers? Still footing the bill while being told to turn down the thermostat and reuse tea bags. So, yes, the king took a royal choo-choo to a charity event, which is basically like showing up to a soup kitchen in a Lamborghini. But hey, he waves really nicely from the window. Garter Day, the royal dodge. When your brother is besties with Jeffrey Epstein, public appearances become a bit complicated. Enter Garter Day 2025, when King Charles made the bold yet baffling move to exclude Prince Andrew from the public procession, but still let him attend privately. Because nothing screams royal accountability like hiding the scandalous relative just out of camera range. It was the ultimate half measure, a weak royal shuffle instead of a clean cut. Charles tried to keep the monarchy's reputation intact while still giving Andrew a seat at the adults' table. You know, just not in the photos. It's like telling your cousin he can come to the wedding, but only if he stands behind a curtain the whole time. Critics on both sides were unimpressed. Anti-monarchists wanted Andrew gone completely. Royalists wanted him either punished or fully reinstated. Instead, Charles gave us this weird PR limbo where Andrew exists in a state of royal Schrodinger's cat, both present and not. So congrats to Charles for once again proving he's the king of indecision, able to alienate everyone with a single ceremonial compromise. Leadership, number, just enough action to make it look like he tried. And just enough inaction to make you wonder if he's ever gonna stop protecting royal family brand risks like their heirlooms. Oops, he said stain. In a shocking moment of royal honesty, Charles described Britain's colonial history as a stain during a speech. Bold, brave, and completely confusing to literally everyone in the Commonwealth. Because when the guy who sits on the golden throne calls his empire a moral grease smudge, you gotta wonder, is he finally becoming self-aware? Or just reading off a PR-crafted apology scroll? Some praised him for the comment, others accused him of political overreach. And the rest of us? We're just wondering why it took him 75 years to admit what historians have been yelling since forever. But don't get too excited. Charles didn't actually do anything about colonial injustice. He didn't return stolen artifacts, pay reparations, or even offer a decent apology. He just said stain, probably while wearing a diamond that was stolen during colonial conquest. And then he moved on to shaking hands and planting trees as per usual. It was peak Charles, a dramatic word drop without follow-through. He gets the headlines, the historical brownie points, and zero of the hard work. So yes, he said colonialism was bad, just as long as no one asks him to give up any of the shiny loot that came from it. Pop star protocol. In 2025, King Charles reportedly asked pop star Katy Perry for a selfie, not for himself, but for his private secretary. Because nothing says dignified constitutional monarch like fangirling on behalf of your staff during a state event. This wasn't a meet and greet in Vegas. This was royalty begging pop royalty for an Instagram moment. Honestly, the Queen's ghost probably rolled her eyes so hard her pearls rattled. Sure, it was lighthearted and modern, but also weirdly desperate. Charles spent most of his life being painfully formal and out of touch. And now, suddenly, he's out here collecting selfies like a royal autograph hound with a BlackBerry full of pop culture wish lists. Some loved it. Others cringed. It was the kind of moment that screams, "Please like me, I'm a cool monarch now." Like your grandpa trying to drop TikTok references at the dinner table. Charming? Maybe. Awkward? Deeply. Look, we're all for a little personality, but maybe don't turn your state visits into Comic-Con Windsor edition. When you're the King of England, the last thing you should be doing is asking for celebrity pics like you're queuing up at a meet and greet in Vegas. The Palace of Price Tags. Buckingham Palace is getting a facelift. How charming. And by facelift, we mean a £369 million taxpayer-funded renovation that includes rewiring, replumbing, and redecorating every chandelier, curtain rod, and corgi scratching post inside. Because obviously, nothing says, we're all in this economic crisis together, like gilded ceilings and climate-controlled throne rooms. Charles inherited the project from Queen Elizabeth II, but now oversees it. And boy, does he love to talk about fiscal responsibility while managing a renovation that costs more than most countries' education budgets. Critics have slammed the timing, as the UK continues to battle a cost of living crisis, food bank use is at an all-time high, and Charles is out here upgrading drapes like he's the monarch of HGTV Regal Edition. Supporters argue that it's necessary upkeep for a historical building. Sure, But do the gold leaf trim and silk wallpaper really need 21st century restoration while people can't afford to heat their homes? Or maybe put off the new royal wine cellar until inflation stops punching citizens in the wallet? At the very least, Charles could have cracked a window and said, "Hey, I get it." But nope, he just keeps sipping his organic elderflower cordial in the world's most expensive construction zone like it's business as usual. Beach cleanup or paparazzi picnic? In 2025, King Charles decided to roll up his royal sleeves and pick up some trash at a Kent Beach cleanup. Cue the PR machine. Official photos captured Charles bending down dramatically to scoop up litter, looking every bit the hands-on eco-warrior. The tabloids applauded the king's environmental dedication. The internet? Less impressed. Critics were quick to label the whole thing a staged photo op designed to polish Charles's green prince image. Because nothing says, "I care about the planet," quite like wearing a freshly pressed jacket and perfectly clean gloves while picking up a single plastic bottle for the camera. It was like a royal episode of Extreme Makeover, Environmental Edition, where optics mattered more than actual effort. Environmental activists pointed out that Charles's decades of jet setting and private helicopter rides kinda overshadowed his beachside good deeds. Meanwhile, social media users poked fun, making memes about the king's apparent new hobby: plastic picking for paparazzi. Look, we all need a little PR love, but maybe skip the photo shoot next time and just pick up the trash like a normal human. Because if the goal was to make the public believe he's Mother Nature's new best friend, well, the ocean's still full of plastic and the skepticism remains. King of naps. If there's one thing King Charles has mastered beyond planting trees and awkward speeches, it's catching Z's at highly inappropriate moments. Over the years, he's been caught dozing off during multiple public events, including solemn Remembrance Day ceremonies. Watching the future king nod off while the nation honored fallen soldiers? Iconic royal content. The man can command an empire, but can't keep his eyes open for 5 straight minutes in a formal setting. Maybe the endless procession of stiff suits and boring speeches is just too much even for a man who spent his life practicing the art of being utterly dull. Photographers have immortalized these moments with perfect timing. Head tilted, eyes closed, mouth slightly open, classic nap pose. It's like watching your grandpa at Thanksgiving, except he's supposed to be the king. And while the internet laughs, the optics are, well, not great. Maybe Charles should trade the crown for a comfy recliner. Because when your biggest public contribution is to sleep through ceremonies, it's hard to inspire confidence. The most exciting man in Britain. When the British press dubbed Charles the dullest man in Britain, it wasn't exactly a compliment. It was a national diagnosis. Despite decades in the spotlight, the man's most notable personality trait remains his obsession with organic farming and polite horticultural musings. Charles once famously said, "I'm terribly boring," and it's hard to argue with the honesty. While other royals mastered charisma and charm, Charles perfected the art of the monotone lecture on compost heaps and paint colors. He spent years lecturing the public on everything from architecture to alternative medicine, topics that, let's be honest, most people pretend to listen to at cocktail parties before sneaking out early. His environmental passion is genuine but delivered with all the excitement of a soggy British summer. And yet, here we are decades later, and Charles's boring reputation remains. His personality is about as electrifying as a damp crumpet, but at least he's consistent. The man might be king now, but the crown didn't magically inject charisma. And there you have it. King Charles III may rule the realm, but his pen tantrums and tampon dreams prove he's the monarch of memes more than majesty. What do you think of King Charles III? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.